Welcome to the Retirement Outsiders Podcast. I'm your host, Steve, and I'm joined by my wife and co-host, Tony. The focus of this podcast is to discuss various retirement topics from an outsider's point of view. In terms of this podcast, an outsider is someone who is not retired, someone who is not a financial advisor, someone who is not a CPA, lawyer, or healthcare advisor. I'm an engineer, and Tony is a teacher. We've been preparing for retirement for several years. We've encountered many different opportunities and obstacles throughout our careers and our paths to retirement. Early on, so much of it was intimidating. Our intent is to make some sense out of all the financial, accounting, estate planning, and healthcare jargon from an outsider's perspective. In addition, we will discuss some of the behavioral aspects that come with not being tied down to a 9-to-5 job. Welcome to the Retirement Outsiders Podcast. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Excellent.
It's Monday. I don't have to work today.
Yeah, me neither.
And it's 500 below zero right now.
It sure is. Sure is. Got the IU game tonight?
Got the IU Miami.
IU Miami. Unfortunately, it's after my bedtime, so I will watch the 25-minute recap on YouTube in the morning.
Yeah. We've got a lot of people down there, though. Let's hope good things happen.
We do, yeah. Well, today, speaking of good things happening, we've got a couple of really fun topics. We're going to talk income taxes, everyone's favorite. And then we're also going to talk about those pesky adult kids you talked about last time. We're going to talk this time some specific ways of getting those kids off the payroll. Yeah,
last time I described the situation and talked numbers a little bit, and this time we're going to talk about a couple of things, but we're going to end with, what do you do?
There you go. All right, so let's dig in. So income taxes. First off, a brief history. So number one, and I'm talking federal income taxes today. I'm not going to talk state income taxes. So federal income taxes. They were first introduced in 1861 to pay for the Civil War effort. So before 1861, no income taxes, none. In fact, they were rescinded in 1872. When's the last time that happened? Where they made a tax and then took it away. So interesting. But it wasn't long later, 23 years later, 1895, it came back with a vengeance. The 16th Amendment states that the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. I think what they're saying is, we can tax you now.
And they do.
Yeah.
There's
at least two words in there that I don't understand, but
I still remember with shock and horror when I graduated from college and got my first salary as a teacher that was a full year. The first year was only half a year, and I didn't get a tax check. I don't even think or if I got a tax check, it was like $17 or something. Like before that, I'd been
the refund check.
Very poor single mom and got really giant fat tax checks and thought that was just the way it was. Everyone got those. And then my brain went, oh, that doesn't actually make a lot of sense, does it?
Well, that's sort of a microcosm of why I'm doing this episode, is because as adults, we really should basically understand the math and not really be surprised by what you either owe or get back from the government in the April timeframe. So, and frankly, I want to walk through some of the math with the idea that we're talking more about tax planning and less about doing your taxes. Most people, before you start thinking about retirement, you think about, I got to do my taxes, and it's like, what does that mean, doing your taxes, right?
It means there's a huge lobby of people who want us to have to do taxes.
Yeah, right.
Don't they know?
Anyway, so we have a progressive tax system, right? which essentially means the more you make, the more you get taxed. And the way I like to describe this is in terms of buckets. Think about, you have several buckets, right? One on top of the other. They're hanging, the very small one at the top's hanging up. And then there's one below that that's a little bit bigger, and one below that that's a lot bigger, and then another one, and so on and so forth. And imagine you take your garden hose and you start filling up that top bucket, right? So water's going in, and pretty soon it's full and it starts spilling over. And it drops out and it falls into the second bucket, right? And you keep the garden hose flowing, and it keeps going, and pretty soon that second bucket fills up and it starts filling up the third bucket. Well,
maybe we should change this to like champagne fountains.
Yeah, right. Now that'd be more fun. Until you got to the last bucket, then you'd probably have a problem. But but that's essentially how our tax brackets work. So in 2026, we've got the following tax rate buckets, if you will. You got your 10% bucket. You got your 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and eventually 37, and that's where it caps off. So when you start to earn income, and I'm talking about good old-fashioned W-2 jobs here, the first thing to know is everybody gets a standard deduction. And in terms of married filing jointly, if you will, the standard deduction this year is going to be $32,200. The standard deduction, what that really means is the first $32,200 y'all earn on your paychecks is tax-free from the federal government. So they're not going to tax that. If you stopped at $32,200 and filed your taxes, you'd be essentially wasting your time other than fulfilling a commitment, but you would pay nothing and you would get nothing in return.
And should we put a pin in that and remember that for our retirement income?
Well, yeah. I mean, the tax brackets work whether you're retired or whether you're working. It's just how the money gets into those brackets is sometimes different.
Okay.
So the first $32,200 that you make is tax-free. Then the 10% tax bucket kicks in. So up to $57,000, which is an additional $24,800 above the $32,200, for a total of $57,000, they're going to charge you 10% on that additional $24,800.
Okay.
So if you filled that 10% bucket, you made $57,000 that year, you would be paying $2,480 in taxes. So 10% of the $24,800.
So you explained this to me not that long ago. I want to say within the last 5 years, this was explained to me, and it shocked me. Like, I thought, well, if I make $60,000, I'm taxed on $60,000.
Well, you get that first chunk free.
No clue.
Yeah, you get the first chunk free. That's your standard deduction.
I did not know. I've heard standard deduction.
Yeah. Or should I say there's no additional charge to that?
No additional
It's not really
charge.
free. It's
Thank
no
you,
additional charge.
friend Terry, for that phrasing.
So, okay, so you filled your 10% bucket, right? Now you make an extra $1. That water starts dripping into that second bucket. Now you're in your 12% bucket. So from then on, all the way up to $133,000 of income, you're going to be paying 12% on that additional. So you've already paid your 10% on the first bucket. That never changes. You'll only ever pay 10% on that first bucket. Your second bucket starts filling up. You're going to pay 12% on how much ever you fill that, you're paying 12% on that. And again, that bracket goes from $57,000 of earnings up to $133,000 of earnings if you count that standard deduction. When you look at the brackets, they subtract that standard deduction out. To me, that's confusing. Because I want to look at the brackets and say, well, hey, we make, $100,000. Where's $100,000 at? I don't want to go, we make $100,000. So where's $100,000 minus $32,200 at? So the way I'm talking about it in general is I'm adding that in. So if you make your two paychecks add up to $133,000, you filled the 10% and the 12% bucket.
It feels to me, and this is just me being me, it feels to me like this system is set up to keep people stupid about their money.
It's not that difficult when you actually look at it. And then also when you think of why. And I'll get to a little bit of the why here in a minute as I explain more and more of the buckets. But again, if you fill up to 10%, you really only pay 4.35% in income tax on your total earnings. If you fill up the 10 and the 12, you're going to pay a total of $11,600 in income taxes, which is 8.72% of your total. And again, the reason it's less is because that first 32.2 is free.
Yep.
So now you're jumping, now you've filled up your first two buckets, and now you got a big old bucket coming up next. The next bucket.
So 10, 12 now.
Now you're going to 22%.
Ooh.
22%, and it's a wide range too. It's roughly $111,000 worth of money that can be put into that 22% bucket for a married couple, and half that for single. So if you make between 100,800 and 211,000 and change, that chunk of that money between 100 and 211, that's going to be taxed at 22%. So you fill that bucket up, you're going to pay $24,000 just for that bucket, and your total is going to be $35,900 and change for the year if you fill up all three of those buckets, culminating in 14.75% of your income, of your total income.
What's the percentage again?
So you went from 4.35 for the 10.
Uh-huh.
Once you fill up to 12, you're at 8.72 of your total. Now you fill up your 22 and you're at 14.75% of your total.
Okay.
So the more money you make, not only do you get taxed more dollars, but the percentage of the dollars you earn increases as well. So the opposite of the rich get richer, right? You get a pretty good break if you make less money in terms of your tax rate. The more money you make, they jack up your rate, taking more and more and more money. Quickly, then the next bucket is 24%. That goes from $211,000 to $403,000.
That's a big amount.
You fill up that whole bucket. That whole bucket by itself is $46,000 of tax. So you fill up all 10, 12, 22, and 24, you're paying $82,000 in taxes that year, which is 18.83% of your total income. Pretty big jump. You go from 10 to 12, then to 22, boom, then 24, mild jump. Next bucket, another big jump, 32%. 32% is if you make $403,000 to $512,000 roughly. That's a smaller bucket in terms of range. You're only going to pay $34,800 if you fill that one up. And your total tax rate at that point would be 21.46%. And then quickly, there's two more buckets. There's a 35% and a 37%. If you fill up your 35% bucket, that's your top salary would be $768,700. You'd be paying 25.79% of your income in taxes. The 37% bucket, now this is a little bit interesting. It starts at $768,701 and goes to infinity.
Mm-hmm.
So your tax rate is 37% in that bucket, and it doesn't matter if you make $1 billion or $800,000. It's the same rate. And I actually find that interesting. I find it interesting there aren't more and more and more buckets. Something to chew on there.
I would be interested in looking at the 2024 numbers. How many people or what percentage of the population is in each one of those brackets?
Yeah, I've never looked at that.
It would be interesting to me, just to know.
Now, if you're following along at home, if you're driving, you're probably a little bit confused, but one one of the things you might have picked up on is depending on what bracket you're going to end up in, if you're going to end up in the 22 or you're going to end up, the first several months that you make money in any given year, first of all, the first 32 are free, right? No taxes. How long does it take you to make $32,200 as a couple? Most people, it takes a while, right? But if you look at your paycheck, they're taking federal income taxes out of the very first one, right? It's called interest-free loan to the federal government for many, many, many months. I would encourage all of you to do some math on that. Figure out when should you actually start paying taxes to the federal government and when do you start, because it's on your first paycheck. And then think about, man, how much money did I give these jokers and what did they spend it on, right? So one of the little tricks I do, I adjust my W-4 throughout the year. I give the government the least amount of money until it starts to be I would owe them money. And then every month I just tweak my W-4 to give them a little bit more and more. So we're basically at zero. So at the end of the year, I don't owe any and I don't get any back. I don't think anybody else does that.
I would love to know that I would be more interested to know what percentage of the population does that. How much time does that take you?
Well, it took me a long time to develop the spreadsheet that I do, but so basically every time we get paid, I put all of our payroll information into the spreadsheet, and it tells me if we stopped working today, what's our tax situation for the year. And until like July, they owe us a bunch of money. The government, because we pay so much and we're way ahead. It's not till the back half of the year where I have to start tweaking the W-4 to start giving them money. But anyway, great website. The AARP website has a great income tax tool, by the way, that I use to...
not that we've ever gotten any mailers from them.
No, I'm not a member, but I do use their website for free. And it helped me root cause a bunch of issues I had in my spreadsheet over the course of the last year is when I've really dug into that. But
yeah, you've talked that website up quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
They've got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, helped me find a lot of issues with the way I was doing some of the math. But okay, so tax planning. We got pre-retirement and post-retirement tax planning. And I'm, again, not talking about doing your taxes. I'm talking about strategizing for ways to minimize your tax burden over the course of your working years and then, of course, over the course of your retirement years. So some of the things you can do for pre-retirement, some of the things that can lower your taxes. So, with 401ks, 403bs, a traditional 401k or 403b is going to reduce your taxes that year. It basically makes anything you put into that is tax deferred. It's not tax free. Someday you'll get taxed on it, but it's tax deferred in that tax year. You will be taxed on it when you withdraw money sometime in the future. Then there's the Roth IRA, the Roth 403b, the Roth 401k. So what's Roth mean? Roth is just when you put money into the Roth vehicle, you still pay income taxes on it that year. But as it gains money through your investments, and when gains money over the years, eventually you start withdrawing it. You withdraw it income tax free. So the basics really now, which one's better? You hear a lot of talk, especially nowadays. Which one's better? Which one should you do? Really, the basics are this. If you're in a tax bracket while you're working and you're convinced that when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, tends to say you should do a traditional type situation. So you're getting taxed later. Because if you get taxed now, you're going to pay more than if you get taxed later.
This is not an advice podcast, by the way.
If you want real advice, get a hold of a financial advisor. But and or CPA, et cetera. But there's some guesswork there. That's one of the problems with choosing is you don't really know what the landscape's going to be. I would say most people think that if anything, taxes are going to increase, not decrease. So, make your choice with the best information you can get from a financial advisor, from a CPA on what your specific situation is. But there's certainly a decision to be made there, and I would not make it lightly. I would definitely, especially the younger you are, the more important it is to meet with a financial advisor and say, hey, this is my career trajectory. This is what I think I plan to do. What is going to give me the best chance to pay the least amount of taxes over the next 30, 40, 50 years? Okay. The next thing you can do, HSAs, health savings accounts. If you have that available to you, that's a nice deduction on your taxes. So any amount of money you put into an HSA comes off of your taxable income, so you don't pay taxes on that. The next nice thing is it grows tax deferred, and then also you can spend it without having to pay taxes. So it's the only triple tax break vehicle out there. Even the Roth is double. You pay taxes now, but when it grows, you don't pay taxes on it. When you take it out, you don't pay taxes on it. That's only two. An HSA, you don't pay taxes now. It grows tax-free. And when you take it out, it's tax-free. So it's all three.
Side note on the tax-free HSA withdrawals, Steve actually listens to multiple retirement podcasts, and one of them gave a little throwaway or little piece of advice about the HSA. Don't use it.
Well, yeah,
Put the money
don't use
in.
It yet.
Don't use it until you're retired, which I had not. If I had never heard that or never had that explained to me, I would have been thinking to myself, well, I'm going to use this money because it's in there and I have a high deductible policy. So I've got to spend money to get health care that would be above and beyond a full good medical plan. So, use that money. No, if you're in a position that you can keep that money and spend your own on whatever, deductibles you have to pay, do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's, if you can, right? I mean, you might be in a situation where, hey, you got a big hospital bill unexpectedly, and that would be a good use of it at that point if you're in a pinch. But yeah, it's like I said, triple tax deferred, or triple tax. There's no taxes on it in three different ways. So if you can save that into retirement and then use it on medical expenses when you're in retirement, that's kind of the best thing you can do. The other thing is after, I can't remember if it's 59 and a half or 65, but I think it's 65. Once you get to a certain age, you can take it out and spend it on anything you want, penalty free, but you have to pay income tax on it then. So you could, buy a TV if you wanted to.
But if you leave it in there, it's tax free as long as you're buying medical.
As long as you're buying anything medical related.
Approved.
Yep. And of course, save all your receipts, because you can, at any point, if you go to the doctor today and it costs you $50 or whatever, in 10 years, you can take $50 out, just withdraw $50 and say, hey, I'm taking this out to pay this bill that I incurred 10, 20, 30 years ago. So save all your receipts, because at some point you could start taking it out and you could spend it on whatever you want, as long as you have a matching receipt to say, I paid $100 before, I'm taking $100 out now. You actually take that $100 and buy dinner with it or whatever. It doesn't matter, as long as you have a matching receipt to pair it with.
Yeah. And this actually works really nice for me, because when I have to go and get I've got a every 3-month prescription that I pick up at CVS. And when I go in and pick it up, in my brain, I'm like, okay, I don't want to confuse this receipt. So I don't buy any snacks or makeup or anything else when I go to CVS. I just buy the prescription. Yeah. Or if I need cough drops or something, it's, only medically related stuff. So it does actually save me a little bit of money every time I go in and buy that prescription.
Yeah. And do yourself a favor. Every HSA we've ever had, every website has a tool where you can upload a receipt. And I do that religiously so that I don't have to save all the paper copies, but I've got, digital images uploaded so that so that we have that tracking. So,
and I'm going to say this probably multiple times in this podcast. I know Steve's a lot and he talks about a lot of stuff and it's intimidating. And you're like, I can't do all this. Pick the things, honestly, that are easy and reasonable. You know, some of the tax stuff I think is overwhelming and might be confusing, but that HSA stuff, that's easy to manage if you've got one already going.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I would, with HSAs, you know, I noticed, Tony, you're a teacher. I think we've made that clear. Your pension is based on the 5 top years of your income.
More on that later, by the way.
If you have your HSA deducted from your paycheck, that reduces your income that they use to calculate your pension. If instead of doing a payroll deduction, you just write a check to the HSA bank, you get the same tax deduction, but it doesn't negatively affect your pension.
We did that for the first time this year.
Well, I
right?
screwed up I didn't figure that out until I think after a full year. And so, you know, it is what it is, but, and feel free to fact check me on that. Check me on any of this stuff, but okay. Next up, 529s, school accounts. I really don't know a ton about these. You can put a bunch of money into an account, tax deferred or tax free if you spend it on school, I believe is how it works for your kids. So that's another way to reduce your income taxes in a working year. Teacher expenses, they come right off the top of your taxable earnings. So, you know, you don't need to itemize deductions. That's one that comes right off the top.
Used to have to back in my early years. Right?
No, we used to do itemized deductions because the standard deduction used to be so small. Now it's so big that almost everything is, for quote unquote normal people, is wiped out. That's why I mentioned teacher expenses. Okay. It's one that's not wiped out. It's in addition to the standard deduction. Whereas like giving clothes to Goodwill and stuff, it's not going to do most people any good in terms of their income taxes like it did, 10 years ago or whatever, whenever they made that change. Okay. Next up, tax planning for post-retirement. So now you're retired, right? Number one, if all of your money is tied up in accounts that are going to be taxed in the future, so a traditional 401k, traditional IRAs, that means they were tax deferred and now you're retired and you need money and you take it out. Now that's called, you got yourself some income and they're going to income tax you on that, just like they tax you on your income today. So depending on your situation, one of the great things that you can do to plan ahead of time is to have multiple different types of streams of income. And when I say multiple streams, different tax situations. So number one, if you have just a brokerage account that's post-tax money, you've saved money in a brokerage account or in a bank account, that's already been taxed, minus any capital gains, et cetera. But if you've got that cash and you really wanted to, go hog wild in your third year of retirement and take a fancy vacation, and you looked at your income tax brackets and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go into the 22% bracket if I do that. And it's going to cost me more money than I want to pay in taxes. What you can do is, instead of taking so much money out that it puts you into that bracket, you take out enough that it gets you right to that bracket, and then take cash that you've saved that's already been taxed and spend that for the rest of that year. It's all about kind of doing it, making a strategy for each year. You can have a part-time job to have another stream of income if you want. To me, the way I look at it is, even if
Walter White, could you do
well,
something?
From a cash standpoint, that'd be great. But we all saw how that turned out. But anyway, part-time job. When I think about taking money out of an IRA or 401k in retirement, I want to pay the least amount of taxes on that possible. If I wanted a little bit to have a little bit more income that year, and I didn't want to pay higher taxes, getting a part-time job, even if that forced me into the higher bracket, so I'm paying more in taxes because of that job, at least I'd feel like, well, but I'm earning money, so it's not as big of a penalty. That's just
Yeah.
that's just
what
me.
you can wrap your brain around. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
Rental income's another good one. That's a nice consistent one. If you have rental properties, but that all goes into your income. So it's a different way to maybe rather than having a part-time job, you might say, well, I'll just rent this house.
Let's say you're going to try the 2-home thing, and you've got a little place down in Florida, and you've got a place up here, and you're using your Florida place, or even the one up here as an Airbnb when you're not there. That's rental income, right?
Well, yeah, anytime you rent something, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be consistent. You rent it out 12 months out of the year, but whatever you're comfortable with, obviously. And as a note, with all your IRAs, anything hasn't been taxed yet, think of it this way: the government wants their money. So once you retire and get to a certain age, they start saying, "Hey, you got to start taking some money out of that old 401k of yours and start paying us tax money for that." So they've created what they call an RMD, or required minimum distribution. And every year you get older, talk about your own mortality. They publish a chart, and based on how old you are, they estimate how long it's likely you'll still be alive, and they use that number in the calculation for how much you need to take out. So essentially, if you've got an IRA or 401k after you've retired, I think RMDs start at 65. I'm not 100% sure on that. But once you have to start taking RMDs, they say, okay, what was the account value at the end of the day, December 31st of the year before? Okay, you're 60. Well, you're probably going to croak in, 21 years. So you divide the value of your IRA by 20, and you got to take that much money out that year. So it's a little nerve wracking, I suppose.
So if you've got $100,000 in your IRA, you're taking $20K out per year for the rest of your life to meet that RMD.
Well, that's the thing, is it can grow so. It's not quite that easy, because every year you got to take you got to take a larger percentage theoretically, because you're
closer to death.
The estimate on how you're going to live, that number keeps going down. Theoretically, the account could lose a bunch of money, so you might even take less the next year, but it would be for bad reasons, because your account lost a bunch of money. If your account grows really big, then you're going to have to take a lot more out. So you have to plan for that, is the point. You got a big old wad of cash in your 401k, and you got to start taking it out. One of the things you can do is, before you reach the RMD age, start taking a bunch of that money out to fill up the 10 and 12% tax brackets. Maximize those cheap brackets before they're gone, and keep out of the 22% as much as you can by using cash or any other post-tax stuff. But even if you don't need the money from your IRA that's going to get taxed if you take it out, you really should think about, hey, should I maximize these brackets? And of course, your financial advisor or CPA can help you make that decision. Okay, next up, Medicare and IRMA. Does everybody know about IRMA? Do you know about IRMA?
No.
Income-related monthly adjustment amount?
Okay.
So everybody knows about Medicare.
I think there's a very small number of people who actually know about Medicare.
Well,
we all know the word.
Well, Medicare, is the health insurance you get to go on when you're 65. But in terms of tax planning, one of the things I'm looking at here is, there's Medicare Part A and Part B, right? Part A is your inpatient hospital care. Part B is your outpatient care. Your Part B and Part D, which is your drug plan, which is a lot less money. I won't talk about that here because it's so small. But your Part B premium that you pay, the amount you're going to pay is based on your tax return from 2 years prior to when you're going to be paying the bill. So you start taking Medicare, most people, when they're 65. Your first monthly premium for Medicare Part B is determined by your tax return you file in the year that you're 63.
So us retiring in our 50s as we plan to do is going to help our Medicare.
No,
No?
no,
That monthly thing?
not that. Not because of that. No, because your income it's not just how much your W-2 income, but if you're taking IRA distributions, that's income.
Right. Okay. All right.
Follow me here.
I'm learning this for the first time with you people.
This is a big one because it doesn't work like the tax buckets where, like, if you earned $5 extra and it pushed you from the 12% bracket to the 22% bracket, you only pay 22% on those $5. So it's not like, the world is on fire and everything's horrible. You screwed up on $5. Big deal. With your Part B Medicare premium, it's the opposite of that. You go $1 over and you've screwed yourself in terms of how much you're going to pay for that entire year. So
it calculates the way I always thought taxes were calculated.
Kinda, yeah.
Honestly.
Well, here's some numbers. So in 2024, when you filed, let's say you're 65 this year, you're going to be signing up for Medicare this year. So the Social Security office is going to look at your 2024 tax return, the one you filed in 2024 from 2023. Actually, I think that it's your 2024 income, it's saying. So, okay. It's your 2024 income that you filed in 2025. So if your 2024 income is $218,000 or less, you're going to pay $202.90 a month for Medicare. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So 218 grand or less, you pay $203, we'll call it. If you make one extra dollar, $218,001, you're going to pay $284.10 a month. That's $82 more a month for the whole year.
Okay.
Yeah, $1,000.
Yeah.
Right? And it gets worse from there. If you make $274,001, it's $405 a month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is when you're starting to get to those Medicare ages, you want to start paying attention to what your income taxes look like. And again, maybe utilizing some of that post-tax money if you're trying to bridge, keep yourself out of certain tax brackets.
This is
when you
where,
just take cash out, it doesn't count as income. So you don't want to earn $218,001.
This is where having a good peer community and having a good financial advisor, maybe even working with a company that has multiple expertise.
Yeah, you really, if you can, you need to have a good financial advisor and a good CPA. Ideally,
it shouldn't stop
they're at
when
the
you
same
stop
company.
working.
Yeah. All this stuff, use what I'm saying as food for thought, but talk to your financial advisor, talk to your CPA. Those are the people that really know all this stuff a lot better than I do. And of course, it changes every year as well. So Just understanding that, hey, I know there's something about earning too much money before Medicare. I need to, make sure you talk to somebody about that.
3 years before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, lastly, I know a bunch of us have just so much money we don't know what to do with it. We love to give it away to charities, and especially when we're retired, we want to give a bunch of money to charities. My dad did that quite a bit, gave a lot of money to charities, and what he would do is write a check.
And the church.
Well, yeah, church, charities. And that's great, good for him. One of the things he didn't know about, and unfortunately I didn't know about it until after he passed away, or I would have helped him with this. There's a little thing called a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution. So one of the things you can do if you're 70 and a half or older, you can transfer up to $111,000. That's 2025 numbers. You can take $111,000 directly from a traditional IRA and give that to a charity. And the beauty of it is you don't pay taxes on it, and neither does a charity. Let me say that again. You can take up to $111,000 out of your IRA and give it to a charity, and nobody, you nor the charity, pays any kind of income tax on that at all. So if you're looking to give money to charities, why would you want anyone to pay? The idea, you're giving it to them for a reason because you believe in that particular charity, et cetera. So if you can avoid the income taxes, utilize this QCD, and your financial advisor, your CPA can help you with that. It's not extremely difficult, but there's paperwork and stuff that needs to happen. And you can set that up, I think, on a cadence where it just does it for you. But
so again, in the back of your mind, maybe it's a good idea to put it in your head that when you retire, whatever that age is, when you have to pull out that money from your IRA, maybe stick that money in a bank account and sit on it until you're 71 and a half or 70 and a half, and then start distributing that with the intention,
Put it in a bank account?
Or something.
Why don't you just keep it in your IRA?
Okay, if you can.
You can't put it into a bank account because you have to take it out.
Okay.
It would be income at that point. No, okay. I mean, you just set it aside. I mean, you can take it out of any pre-tax or post-tax, I should say, vehicle, right, where you pay taxes later. So. Okay, that's income taxes. That's all I got.
All right, let's talk about how to get the children off the payroll, because when you head into retirement, you don't need 2 sets of bills, or 3 or 4, depending on your home culture. I am going to be using Wes Moss's book, What the Happiest Retirees Know, 10 Habits for a Healthy, Secure, and Joyful Life, out of 2022. Steve, will you introduce Wes Moss to our audience?
Wes is married to my cousin. And he was on The Apprentice, I think season 2.
It's 2 or 3.
Came in like second place, I think.
I don't think so.
All around good guy?
All around good guy. I don't think I've actually ever shared any sort of conversation with him, but I've been in the room, and he's been in the room too.
We were at his wedding.
We were at his wedding, but I didn't talk to him. But he's a cool guy, and his podcast is really fun. I've listened to that. I have read a lot of his book that I'm going to be referencing, and he's also got a radio show. He's out of Atlanta. I'm going to be talking today about Chapter 5. But before I do that, I'm going to list the 10 habits, and we're not going to discuss these. And I'm going to tell you right now that he's very clear that these are his research that he has kind of accumulated over the years of owning his own financial company and dealing with people heading towards retirement or in retirement. And so these are mostly generalizations. So when you hear these 10 things, this is not a personal attack on you or your situation. These are things he's observed. And I just want to make that clear. I think sometimes when people hear things that don't go along with their lifestyle or habits, they like to get grouchy. Don't do that. I think this has become, a lot of this is common knowledge. I did a little more research on this topic, and I did some Google search in different books, looked at their content, and all of this information seems to be repeated. So this is not new. This is pretty common knowledge, especially among retirement.
Okay, number 1.
Says you.
Let's hear this list.
All right. So number 1, have excellent money habits. He actually recommends $500,000 before you even think about retirement. You are, number 2, curious and adventurous. Number 3, what we're going to be talking about, kids are independent. Number 4, you're married, or you've only been divorced once. Number 5, you believe, you give, and you do good. 6, you stay connected. 7, you are healthy. Number 8, you have good home habits, and that means home ownership. Number 9, you exhibit excellent investor behavior. And number 10, you are smart spenders, or you are masters of living in the middle. So those are the 10 things he sees as most common among happy retirees. When you are looking at parenting your adult children, and you are looking at what makes someone a happy person within their family, those happy retirees have 2.5 kids. Their kids are financially independent. Their kids are married and they live outside of the house that they own. They live near most of their kids. That retiree does, or those retirees do. And they stop paying for education after the child's bachelor's degree. They do not pay for the advanced degrees. 4 years, that's it. That's all you get. And as I mentioned in episode 3, adults are living with their parents at a rate we haven't seen since the Great Depression. And I think that's ironic because that also creates, living with your adult children is going to create feelings of depression. It does not positively, in general, impact your feelings of happiness. In fact, it does the opposite. Does this mean you should never give in? Does this mean you should never give your kids money who are adults? No, that's not what we're talking about here. If there's a situation and you feel like you can help and you feel like you can afford it, and you also feel like it's going to make you feel good, and you're not going to have those feelings of resentment or any of the other negative feelings that come when money comes into play in close relationships, no, then that's a positive. You want to help your kid with a down payment and everybody's happy because they get a house and they also get to decorate their house because now they've got a little extra cash. Absolutely. Contribute to that.
Yeah, here's the way I look at that a little bit. If your kid needs money on occasion, no big deal, right? If they need money on a cadence, it starts to become, it's not a money problem anymore. It's a decision-making problem on their part. What decisions are they making that requires them to need money from you on a cadence?
And what does the conversation look like? Does your person that you created, do they think that you owe them? Do they, the psychology to me is what is really key here. Not necessarily the money going out, but what are the feelings? Does that young person feel like you owe them for whatever reason? Do they feel like, well, you have it, so you should give it to me? I don't have it. If that's what's going on, you should be putting a giant no poster on your front door. Not today. We're closed. Bank is closed, because that is never going to stop. And yeah. Okay. So are you going to be happy or unhappy with that decision to help your child financially? And this is a simple adjustment. It's not simple to do, but it is a simple adjustment. Instead of reacting to your instinctual nurture reflex, that first gut feeling, my kid's in trouble, I need to help, which I think most parents have. When somebody's coming to you and they need something and you gave birth or are part of that child's upbringing, you want to help them. But the next question needs to be, what's really going to help here, right? Is this going to make us happy or unhappy? Go back to that question. Just because they need you financially doesn't mean that the need non-financially isn't greater. And let me kind of talk about that. Remind yourself in your head, this person is an adult. You've already done your job. Move your thought process inward. This is very difficult, especially if this is a high-stress conversation. Ask yourself, will this really help? Are there other avenues? And if you're married or in a partnership, what do they think? Have you had that conversation? To me, the most important thing that should happen if that person comes over and asks you, because you're the weaker link in the couple, because there's always a weaker link in the couple, that conversation needs to be, well, I need to talk to Steve. I need to talk to Tony. Give us a day or two and we'll get back to you and tell you what we think of this situation. Do not respond with whatever you need, because their idea of what they need and your idea might be different. Can I afford to do this? That actually might need to be the number one thing. Can you afford it? And will I be expected to do this again? Has this happened before?
Yeah, it comes back to, is it a money problem or a decision-making problem
Yes.
that your loved one has?
And so what do you do? Well, one of the things you can do to kind of assuage that feeling of wanting to help and fix the problem is you can say, okay, I'm not gonna hand you money. I'm not gonna buy you a new transmission. I'm not gonna do the things that you think you need. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna help you in other ways. You're gonna lead by example and share your good habits. Hopefully you've been doing this all along and they just haven't learned all of them. But you're going to share the good habits. You're going to say, okay, here's what I do. You know, you really want this house. You really want to buy a house. You want to live in a house outside of apartments. You've had some bad, neighbors that are living wall to wall, and you want a home that you don't have to share a wall with another person. Would you like my help to get you to where you can afford to buy a house? Here's what we did. Here's what I did. Gradually change your financial relationship from money to mentor. And this, for some of you, is going to be very difficult because this might be a 10 or 15 year uncomfortable money relationship. Become the mentor. Come to me for advice. Don't come to me for money. If you're living in the same dwelling, create a plan for domestic independence. This may require some financial help up front, but this might be one of those situations where this is an investment in your own happiness. So maybe giving them the down payment on the apartment or whatever you have to do to get them out of your home, that might be it. And then tell them this is it. If you can't pay your rent, that's on you. Your name's on the lease. Prioritize your own financial health. And when I say prioritize, that's number one. That should be your first consideration because you're the one that has to live within your means going forward, especially if you're already in retirement. Remind Junior that this is not about them, but about you. Stop there. What do they say? No is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. This isn't about you. This is about me. Avoid accusations and when I was your age kinds of conversations. Avoid that. They don't care. You've already told them that. If appropriate, guide them towards a financial advisor or a credit hotline. I know people who have children who are very well educated and have good jobs and have terrible financial practices, and they're still helping them out. They don't need money. They need help, and they probably need help from someone who's not in the family. This should be a neutral party because you probably have a broken financial relationship that needs more than just you saying no. And to me, the hardest, most important is let them to face the consequences if they just assume you're going to come in and sweep up the problem, because that might happen depending on your relationship. There might be a situation where your kid basically is like, okay, I'm going to move out, but I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. And then they don't. That's not your problem. It's going to feel like your problem. It's going to feel like terrible, but that's not your problem. And once you break that seal, you're probably going to see some changes.
Yeah, once you make it your problem, it is your problem now, and the next time it'll be your problem as well.
Yeah. Yep. So difficult.
What a downer!
It is a downer. It is a downer. And
we need to have
to me,
a more upbeat podcast next time.
We're going to have a more upbeat podcast because we're going to talk about ways to make ourselves happy in retirement. But I think this is a big one because if you are in this situation where you are constantly helping out.
Oh yeah, this is avoiding a negative, right?
This is avoiding a negative.
So next time we'll talk about creating a positive.
All right.
Hopefully.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Happy fixing.
Yeah, right. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Hey, I whipped right through that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thanks for joining us. We hope you'll join us again next time on The Retirement Outsiders. Have a good one.